For the past few years now, whenever you say the name Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone, you often have to bring up Femke Bol right alongside her, because in the 400 hurdles, it has been them two and then the rest of the world. I'm not going to waste my time going through all the accolades. There's no point. But generally speaking, if Sydney decides to show up to run the 400 hurdles on the world stage, she's going to win the gold. That's been the case for the better part of the past decade. And when she doesn't, Femke Bol will get the gold. Now, in 2025, they both left the World Championships with individual gold medals. You probably were paying attention, and you noticed, because Sydney moved over to the 400, and once again, I'm not going to waste my time on it. I've already shared my thoughts on it. There's no need to go back on it now. The race was awe-inspiring, and Femke winning the gold in the 400 hurdles was more or less a foregone conclusion. She was like a second faster than anybody else in the world. But that's not what we're here to talk about, because World Athletics decides to give out a Women's Track Athlete of the Year award, and they put nominees up. And Sydney and Femke, yes, I totally agree, probably deserve to be nominees. And a lot of people have weighed in, so this is my chance to come to the conversation. This is entirely unscripted and entirely unedited. I'm just gonna rip the Band-Aid off, and let's just see where this goes. But when it comes to Athlete of the Year, specifically the Track Athlete of the Year for the women's side, those two women were not supposed to be the nominees as the finalists. I mean, you could put them in the 5 of the people who you put up there to be considered. I'm okay with that. But we know who was supposed to be Athlete of the Year, if actually giving it out based on what people did in the year matters. So, why is this controversial? How did Sydney and Femke get the nominees when really there's no evidence to suggest that it should have been them? This is no shade against them. But if we're talking about a Track Athlete of the Year, the two people who seemed like the most logical choices were as follows. Because yes, Faith Kipyegon, she did what she does, broke her own world record again, did leave the World Championships with a gold. All of that is amazing. But we're talking about Athlete of the Year, so you got to start comparing people to what other ones did. If you want to go down the sprints path, it was Melissa Jefferson-Wooden. Triple gold at the World Championships, so check. And she was undefeated in the 100 all season long. One of the fastest seasons from top to bottom, 10:61 in the final. For those who know about sprinting, which that's where I generally land, it was impressive. She was almost undefeated in the 200. Almost, but not quite. And again, it resulted in a gold medal. And the 4x1, I mean, fine, give her 0.25 of a medal. But in general, what more do you really want from a women's short sprinter when it comes to a, start to finish season? She just dominated from, the moment we saw her all the way to the end, and more or less looked bulletproof. Again, there was that 200 where Gabby Thomas got her. I mean, Tamari Davis was there. She got her too, but doesn't really matter at the moment. So that's on the shelf. And then there's Beatrice Chebet. And if you remove all of the bias, as much as you possibly can, if I were to tell you that there was an athlete who's going to go double gold individually at the World Championships, is going to break a world record in one of those events, was going to be number 2 all time in a third event. In this case, it's the 3K for Beatrice Chebet. That athlete, what more do you want? Gave you a world record, one of the best all time in a different event, double gold at the Worlds, and you're going to say this person is not a finalist? Again, who's doing the voting? And that brings up the real conversation, because Beatrice Chebet and Melissa Jefferson-Wooden, I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. They are dominant. So dominant, in fact, that they forced their way into the conversation. But Melissa Jefferson-Wooden said it herself in an interview that when it comes to the spotlight, it's inevitable, but she's really not chasing it. And when it comes to promoting the sport of track and field, which World Athletics is doubly tasked, because on one end, they just run international competitions. They do a pretty good job of it. I actually think they do a really good job of running international competitions. But because they are the gatekeepers of sport for track and field, which they shouldn't be, specifically on the pro side, we look at them to do more and, to carry more weight, things that really aren't their responsibility. And if you had a pro product and you wanted to, represent it at the highest level, the truth is, you would want the athletes with the biggest names to be at the forefront. But if you're new here, I want to say thank you for even making it this far into the video. And I'm Coach Rob, and if you really want to know what's going on with the fastest athletes in the world, then you are in the right place. And if anything that I say actually connects with you, It is always greatly appreciated if you would please like and subscribe. But if I don't, just let me know in the comment section, because I try to read them all. That brings us back to Sydney and Femke, because let's be real. When it comes to the biggest names in the sport, thinking European, Femke Bol on the track, yes, that's about as big as it's going to get. And then when you talk about, from the American context, Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone and all of her success is about as big as it's going to get. That rivalry between them, which really isn't all that much of a rivalry, if we're just being honest, if you're checking the win-loss column. But them two being in the front and everybody else being behind them, that is box office. That is a story. I've documented it. I've talked about those two women racing against each other, or the possibility of racing against each other, for a long time. But this year, Sydney's 400 was amazing, but it was number 2 all time. It just was. You don't have to like it, but the facts are the facts. In the sport where apparently world records matter, Beatrice Chebet did that. For that matter, Faith Kipyegon did it. But Beatrice Chebet did that. Then we talk about number 2 all time. She did that too. Then we talk about individual golds. She did that twice. So she matched Melissa on individual golds. She matched anybody on the women's side in terms of, world records. I mean, hey, nobody else did it except for Faith, and who broke her own. And there's some voter fatigue where if you've been really good for a long time, we get tired of giving the same award to the same people. But what does the award really mean? Because for a period of time, contractually, it did matter to athletes winning something like Athlete of the Year from the IAAF or World Athletics. Like, that mattered. I don't know what the contracts look like right this minute. I'm pretty sure that it means something. It definitely ain't nothing. And being nominated even is probably a very big deal. But again, without a professional gatekeeper, without a true league, because the Diamond League is just a bunch of fancy warm-up meets. Historic meets that already existed that now have a branding and some prize money on them. Sometimes they're just filling lanes, you're just trying to cobble a field together. We don't really know who's going to run where. Yes, you do get some good fields, you do get some great athletes. The Diamond does deliver on that. But the races themselves lack stakes because we all know it's about worlds. And the Diamond League ramps us up into that. Real pro sport is separate from international competition. I will say it until people actually understand this part. In all the real pro sports, professional competition and international are separate. You can't prepare for the international through the pro. They're not the same thing. You can celebrate the international. We can have that competition. It can be amazing. It's just not the same. You can win championships as a pro and championships on the international stage, but we don't have that. This is how we got to a place where the Track Athlete of the Year award instituted by World Athletics is basically the MVP of the track. Am I missing something? That's kind of what the award is. So if we're going off of actual performance, sorry, it wasn't supposed to be Sydney and Femke. They're much easier to talk about, just being real about it, because I can make that video with my eyes closed, because I have looked at their reports over and over and over again and watched every race they ran this year, both of them, where it's not hard to get excited or to, put some juice behind that rivalry. And maybe when we hear that Femke's going up to the 8 and Sydney just went down to the 4 and is now real close to the world record, we might not ever get to see them face off individually ever again. He's definitely not in a race that actually matters. Unless Femke decides to come out of the 8, because I don't see Sydney going there. I'm just being real. I think this is what it's going to be. Femke and Sydney, maybe this was the last opportunity we had to realistically put them in the same conversation and act like we're talking about real races that happened. And if that's the case, fine. But from what I understand, fan voting doesn't necessarily support those two women being the nominees either. And I'm pretty sure the track and field community agrees that if we're going off of actual performance without bias, if you like sprints, that's fine. If you like hurdles or whatever, that's fine. But if you actually just care about performance, we talk about records, medals, winning, all of it. Melissa, Jefferson-Wooden, and Beatrice Chebet, that's probably where everything was supposed to land. And it didn't. So this is the world that we're living in. I mean, technically anybody can give out an awards, like an award show. So maybe I need to make my own. I mean, hey, my business, we can sponsor it. I can call members of the media. You let me know in the comments if you want me to. And hey, maybe we do, make our own awards and hand them out by the end of the year. Maybe we'll roll it out in December. like before we get to the new year. Best track athlete, best this, we'll do our own voting and see which way it falls. I don't know how much people are going to care, but at the very least, we can get a bunch of folk together who have a voting interest, who pay attention to the sport, and we can determine who the best athletes actually are. We can even go make a trophy if we feel like it. So technically these things don't mean all that much. Anybody can just make an award. But if we're gonna give an award, and it's gonna be based off of, performance, what more do you want? Because the biggest reason why pro track not being legit, like a real thing, like the real reason, like the main problem with it, is it makes it incredibly hard to just go out there and be good at the sport and be recognized. That is the problem. Because they're the limit, they're the cap on how far international competition can go when it comes to self-promotion. In real pro sports, you can be celebrated for winning. You just be real good at the job, you go in there and you win. And you can get compensated, and for that matter, real fans can pay attention. And then you can go home. As Melissa Jefferson-Wooden said, the spotlight might be inevitable, but if you don't like it, that's okay. Tim Duncan made a great NBA career, became a Hall of Famer and a superstar, and got paid handsomely for doing it, while he never made himself a public entity. He didn't push his brand at all. And then you have athletes who are really good, like a Kawhi Leonard in basketball, who actively does the opposite of promoting the sport. But he's still good enough to make a good living, very good living in the NBA, by just showing up and being good at the job. They have a league they built up over time. Because if you go back to the 1950s, you're watching a whole bunch of people who had day jobs play basketball. And even when you get to the 80s, you're watching the NBA Finals on tape delay. There are Hall of Famers in the 90s who made $5 million across their entire career. And now we've got people making $5 million under a mid-level exception. We're talking about average professional basketball players. So there's levels to this. Leagues progress over time. Track and field is nowhere near that on an individual or team level, and that's okay. But if this is what we're doing, where it's international competition and everything else is preparing us, I think the real reason why it's really confusing to know why we ended up with Sydney and Femke compared to everything else is nobody really knows what stakes we put on any of these races. I thought what we were doing was that the World Championships was what mattered the most, at least in a year where we don't have the Olympics. And if that's true, then yes, Beatrice and Melissa Jefferson-Wooden, those were the two votes. But if that's not true, if it's not, then maybe, just maybe, there is an argument to be made for Sydney and Femke. Because if you're looking at a whole bunch of other data points that I don't really know what they are. Because they performed well. They did. We're just comparing it to everybody else. That's how we do awards. Maybe that's why. If there was a pro league or something like that and they were doing their own awards, we would know which races mattered. We'd be able to stack it up and we could even figure out who was voting on it and we could even know who to hold accountable. But I don't think anybody knows who to blame. And does it matter in the grand scheme who wins this award? Probably not. It matters perhaps to somebody's bank account. If there's an incentive in your contract, that matters. But it is what it is. And since everybody's been weighing in on this topic, I figured I might as well throw my hat in the ring. So, like I said, it's unedited, unscripted. This is more or less a rant video. Just got back from vacation. And, considering it's the off season, ain't a whole lot going on in the pro track world. But when this news dropped and people started hitting my phone to talk about it, I figured if we're going to have the conversation anyway, we might as well have the real conversation. The sport of track and field is not just about running fast. It is about doing it over and over and over again. Because whenever you step to the line, your reputation is on the line as well. With the Wake Up, Run Fast, and Repeat shirt, you can make it clear that running faster than the competition is a habit. Get yours at scarecruiting.com/shop or use the link in the description below. It's a huge support to me and this channel, so I can continue to make you more content like this. And remember, it is always greatly appreciated if you would please like and subscribe.